All right, so what brings you out tonight?
Well, I feel very passionately about defending the rights of my fellow Americans, in particular Muslims, because their rights are especially under attack right now. This is an issue I'm very concerned about and feel very strongly about trying to protect and trying to protest.
So what would you say to the people at home who say a registry is not that big a deal and it'll help law enforcement?
I would tell them to look at the history that led to internment camps in this country and the history that led to the Holocaust abroad. I would tell them to look at the precedent and all of the articles that told people to calm down and told people that this exact kind of law enforcement was not a big deal until it was, and until hundreds of thousands of Americans and of other citizens in other countries were treated horrifically and wiped out in huge numbers all over the world for this exact kind of treatment.
A lot of people are making a comparison to Hitler and the Holocaust. Do you think that that is an apt analogy, or do you see that as completely different?
I don't see that as completely different. I think that a lot of the literature that you see, if you go back to the years where Hitler was still ascending to power, a lot of the literature that you see at the time telling people, oh, well, let's wait and see, oh, let's give him a chance, like he's not going to follow through on a lot of his most extreme promises. You see a lot of the same language that you're now seeing about President-elect Trump and about his cabinet of deplorables, that he's not going to enact some of the most extreme versions of his policies. He's not going to oppress Muslims and LGBT people and Black Americans and immigrants as extremely as he says he will. That will never happen. It's happened before, it can happen again, even here.
Do you think that the obstacles that might prevent a dictator from rising would be able to stop him, or do you think that he could actually overcome them?
He's come this far, and nobody thought he would. So I think anything's possible at this point, but anything's possible, and I want to stand with people who want the same kind of world that I do.
So for the people who are at home who are afraid to protest, or they are afraid of living in Donald Trump's America because they're in a group that is marginalized, what would be what you would say to those people?
For those who are afraid to protest, I would say that the media has an unfortunate tendency to emphasize violent protests over peaceful ones. I am also pretty much a novice when it comes to protesting. I'd only been to a couple of protests in my life before this election, and this is a wake-up call for me. And every protest I've been to in the past couple of weeks has been peaceful, has been affirming, has been passionate, but in no way dangerous. It's been inspiring. It's been inspiring to see people coming out at 1 p.m., at 9 p.m., to see 3-year-olds, to see 93-year-olds, to see people from all different backgrounds gathering together to show, yes, I feel this way too. No, you're not crazy. This isn't normal. And we need to band together to make our voices heard and to also just keep each other a little bit saner through this ridiculous time we're in. Yeah, and for those who are afraid, I guess, because they're in a group that is oppressed, then I would say that the best safety is in numbers, is to get together with the people that care about you, who are in the same situation as you, to come together, to see each other, to look after each other and stick together and stand up together for what's right.
Do you think America will ultimately reject the Muslim registry?
I don't know, but I want to help America try to reject the Muslim registry. I think so much of it depends on citizens standing up, calling their representatives, making their voices heard in Congress and on every level of government that they can. I think the more people care about this and show that they care about this and call people with power and tell them they care about this and maybe stop traffic on a Saturday night to create ripples that show they care about this, the better.
A lot of people have said that protesting is not worth the time, and that he won, and that we should just sort of get out of the way and allow him to be the president. What would you say to those people who doubt the value of protesting?
I've thought about this a lot myself, whether or not protesting makes any real difference, but frankly, if everything was okay, this isn't how this street would look on a Saturday night in Center City, Philadelphia. The fact that these streets are not quiet and peaceful right now is itself making a difference, is showing that there is real political unrest in this country, and there are real people who are impacted and upset and scared by what is happening under even like the first inklings of a Trump presidency, even the first nominations, even the first post-election tweets coming in at 4 a.m. You know, like.
Do you think?
Yes.
Do you think that people will be, if they see protests now, they'll become more wary, or they'll be less likely to listen to protests in the future?
I don't think so. I think that the more we, I suppose, normalize protests, like emphasizing that this entire scenario, this election, this candidacy, this cabinet are not normal, but the more that we normalize protest as a reasonable reaction to these kinds of events, the more likely people are to listen to protests. Like, I don't think it'll be a matter of becoming desensitized to what protest is saying. I think it may lead to protesters being taken more seriously, as we've seen in the past. Like, some of the most historic photographs and videos that you grew up in, like looking at in history classes, those are gigantic marches and speeches given at gigantic marches. They're massive forms of protest, and those didn't start with a billion people coming together. Those started with smaller protests over years, gathering force until a gigantic group came together to say something.
What was your reaction to when Donald Trump was elected?
I was horrified. A part of me was shocked and a part of me wasn't. There's a lot of hate in this country, and I knew that, and I knew that a lot of it sourced in angry white people, and frankly, I'm pretty ashamed of my whiteness right now. Like, it is a shameful time to be a white person in America, maybe even more so than before. But I was not surprised by the hate. I was surprised by the electoral sweep of that hate taking over our country. Partly because I live in a blue bubble, right? Like, Philadelphia is largely Democratic. My Facebook news feed is overwhelmingly, strongly liberal. So many of us preach to the choir, right? We have a very different sense of what's going on in the country around us versus what is actually happening as a whole, how divided we actually are, like, in numbers.
Anything else that you'd like to say to the people at home?
I don't know. Let's see. I hope that if you've been upset by the events that have been unfolding in this election, that you'll consider getting involved. It's easy to protest. It's easy to show up and mingle with the crowd and chant things and walk for a little while and feel empowered. So there's not a huge barrier there. Many protests are kid-friendly, so make it a family day. If you've been feeling kind of ambivalent and don't know where you stand, the internet is a huge place. Do some homework, maybe make sure that the websites you're looking on are credible before you believe them. And lastly, if you don't feel like going out and protesting because it's cold, but you still want to make a difference, look for a plan of action calling sheet. There are so many different documents floating around right now that are just meant to be resources for which representatives you can call to protest things like the appointments of Stephen Bannon, the appointment of Jeff Sessions. There are resources there for you if you don't want to leave your house but still want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say, that there are options for all kinds of people on the spectrum.
Do you mind if we use this footage?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Cool.